Now live, Bill.
All right. Maneuver the screen a little bit here. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm Bill Stine, Vice President, General Manager of Estes. Going to give you all a little inside view of our facility up in Penrose, Colorado today. So welcome to the model rocket capital of the world. Most of this video was put together, I think we shot most of it on Tuesday after we got a pretty big snowstorm the day before. But in Penrose, it can be very, very snowy, and the next day it's just like this where it's very, very sunny. And by lunchtime, the roads are all clear, and generally when I drive home at night, most of the snow is gone. So anyways, this is a view of our facility looking from Highway 50 to the north and that mountain range right over the peak of the center building off to the far north. That is the peak of Pikes Peak. And Penrose is about 40 miles southwest of Colorado Springs here in Colorado. And we are right on Highway 50, just about a half a mile east of the intersection of 50 and Highway 115. And other notable attractions in the area are Royal Gorge and the Royal Gorge Bridge are about 15 miles to the west of us. And that is the #1 tourist attraction in Fremont County. And back in the day when Estes used to give tours, we were actually the #2 tour attraction in the summertime, and we would run well over 250,000 people a year through on tours. So a lot has changed since those days. The facility today is over 320 acres, and we have just a little bit under 150,000 square foot under roof that encompasses all of our administration, manufacturing, and warehousing facilities that are domestic here. As you know, we have a sister facility in China where a lot of the kits are packaged out, and then everything, the rocket engines, all the packaging of the rocket engines, igniters and wadding, and then any product that is married to an engine like a starter set is manufactured here in this facility. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. Beautiful drone footage. This front administration building was completed in the winter of 1968. And now we're going to greet you here at the front door, and everybody come on in. We are a locked and controlled facility through Department of Homeland Security. So you have to come in. Now we have additional COVID protocols. When you come in, we got to take your temperature, and you have to sign some documentation. Of course, we are all masked up and maintaining social distances. So just a slow pan here of the front lobby, some of the cool stuff that's on display. So one thing I'd like to mention up front here is that I'm not going to be able to see all of your questions until the end when I stop sharing my screen. So go ahead and feel free to fire them away, and make sure you use the Q&A section, not the chat. The chat is just for you guys to talk amongst yourself, and I can't see those, but I can see anything, or I will be able to see all the questions you have in the Q&A. And I've left quite a bit of time at the end for us to go through all of those. So we'll get through the video and the tour, and then I'll try and answer as many of your questions as I can. So we were just in the lobby, and now we've come upstairs, and I'm going to give you a quick little tour of my office. My office is one of the better collections in the building of Estes and personal memorabilia. As many of you know, I've been involved in the hobby pretty much all of my life. I started working at Centuri/Estes in 1978 and left in 1981. And since that time, I've pretty much been involved in every significant competitor that Estes had over the years, from Enertech to MRC, and then in the early 90s, I founded Quest and sold it to Gary Rosenfield in 2013 and retired from the industry in 2015. A lot of my early years I was a very active NAR participant, and we had a great club here in Phoenix called the Val Sun section. So this is the glass case in my office, which is filled with a lot of memorabilia, a lot of very early Estes products, and of course the predecessor model missiles, which was the company that my father founded and that Vern contracted to make the rocket engines for. And when model missiles went out of business, of course, Vern continued on with Estes, and 62 years later, it is still here. So just a few of the goodies that are in there. I have quite an assortment of some of the very early engines that were made on Mabel. Some of them were made in Denver, and some of them are from initial production runs up here in Penrose. This is my father's original NAR license, NAR number 2, and note the original NAR logo on his license. I also still have mine. It's hanging on the wall over there, issued on the night of my birth in 1960. Here's just a cool old artifact, an actual original NAR patch. This was before they went through the logo change to the tall triangle that we're all used to seeing now. And you can see there's some Camrocks in there and orange bullets. So now we're back downstairs, down into the lobby. Throughout the facility, there's great artwork on all of the walls. We're headed into, this is the front conference room. And pre-COVID, we would have anywhere between 14 and 16 people in the room for meetings. And of course, now we've had to significantly change the IT structure in the facility. And now we have these large video screens where we present. And we use Teams a lot, Teams and Zooms. And I would say still at least 50 to 60% of our workforce is all working remotely. And the remaining percentage, there's a lot of things that we do in manufacturing and assembly that you can't do from home on your laptop. You have to physically be present to do it. So those jobs are all still in force and working here in Penrose. And again, lots of shifts, I should say changes in our processes to accommodate the social distancing. We work in cohort groups so that we minimize exposure, and you're only exposed to the same people, not a wide range of people. And we stagger our shift schedules and our break schedules, and it's all gotten a little bit more complicated in the COVID world, but we have done very well in pivoting all of that and keeping the flow of product coming in from China and manufacturing here, and of course shipping out to you guys. So now we're going to leave the front conference room. One other point on that front conference room: most of what I show you here in the front admin building has been repurposed several different times. Each room has a unique story and things that have been done in it. That front conference room, its original purpose was it was actually a theater, and it was set up with seating in it and a movie screen there on the west end. And we would start the tours. The tours typically had 15 to 20 people in them. They'd start out in the lobby, and then we'd bring them into that theater, and we would show them a movie and a slideshow of what they were about to see, and of course a few of the things that they wouldn't be able to see face to face. And then the tour guide would essentially follow pretty close to the path that I'm going to walk you through the facility. And so let's go ahead and start. Most of the offices on Tuesday were empty because principally all of these people, as I said, are working remotely. We've got a lot of old art, and there's some of the new stuff hanging on the wall. So this is a few of the different visual decal and paint treatments that we looked at for the dark. This office here is Nicole Bayer, who is our Director of Education, and she was in giving a online seminar that day, so that's why Nicole was in the office. The room here to the left is, we now call this the training center. In its original form, the wall that you're looking at wasn't there, and the room was twice as large, and there were 2 rows of desks, a total of 14 desks, 14 ladies in here, and this was the order processing center. And your orders would come in through the mail, and literally there were bags and bags of mail that came in, and of course it all had to be sorted. And these ladies' jobs were to open all the envelopes and separate the catalog requests from the actual orders. And then the orders were turned over to a separate process for picking and filling and shipping. And the catalog requests were turned over to a separate department. And then you also have to remember that in the 1960s, we were not internet based, and credit cards didn't really exist or were not widely used. So this was a cash business, and we had an awful lot of coins that came in, particularly for the catalog requests. And the rest of it was all either green cash, checks, or money orders. And one of the front offices has a very large walk-in safe. And when I say walk-in, I'm talking about the size of the safe that you'd have in a bank with all the safety deposit boxes. And that was because we had an awful lot of cash on site on any given day. And I'm told that they actually had to use a wheelbarrow, and they would take a contractor wheelbarrow and roll it down next to the desks. And these ladies would take their canvas bags full of coins and heft them over off their desktop into the wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow would then whisk off down to the safe area. So that's the training center. And the reason we have a training center is, of course, there's a huge amount of OSHA training that has to be done. And then because we are a pyrotechnics manufacturing facility, we have a number of BATF and DOT trainings that all of our employees have to go through constantly. So we have a lot of training going on at any one time, and a dedicated area for that. Moving down the hallway, there's a wonderful collection of old package art and actual renders from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we're going to take just a little bit of time and walk down. Our videographer on this day was Jason Gomez, who's one of our marketing associates, and he's the guy who creates a lot of the videos that you see on Facebook and the 3D animations and renders that you see us use all the time. So this area here is the R&D lab. I had to go in and turn the light on. Top secret facility. So many of you know John Boren. This is the area that John works in. I personally think that John has the best job in Estes. He's paid to play and build and design rockets all day long. He usually grumbles at that and says, well, it's not as much fun when you have to do it all day, every day. But you know what? He still smiles an awful lot and laughs a lot. So I think he's having a great time, regardless of maybe being grumbly some days. So that's just a wide collection of stuff. We were actually in the process of cleaning out a storage room. Here's a real cute little Nike Hercules. Now wait. Oh, he edited it out. I actually dropped that right after that, but I guess he edited it out. So there's the R&D room. Now we're going to take a walk back into the sales and marketing area, which is a ghost town. 3 years ago, this room was all storage. None of these offices were in use. There's now 8 offices on the perimeter that house our sales and marketing team, which is sales and marketing director. There's a web sales director. Of course, many of you know Sandra, who runs customer service, and a number of other support people. All of these people are working remotely. Now we're walking into the art department, which is also currently a ghost town. All of our graphic artists are working remotely. We have 4 artists and an additional videographer and photographer. Now we're going to take a walk through, and this room right here, we're going to pause it. And I know you guys can't answer me, but I'm going to ask you if anybody can identify what they think this room might be with a great big sink in it. And while you're all posting your answers that I can't see, I'll tell you what it is. So this is a dark room. And there are 6 dark rooms along this hallway right here. And of course, these hark back to the glory days of Estes in the late 1960s, when one of our best-selling products was the original Astrocam. Well, it wasn't Astrocam then, it was the Camrock. And what was very unique about the Camrock was that it took a specialized piece of film. It was a round disc about 1 1/4 inch in diameter. And we couldn't get Kodak to make that film for us. So what we did was we had to buy large bulk rolls of 120 size film. And in these dark rooms, one of the dark rooms was dedicated to cutting that film into the round discs and loading it into those little light tight envelopes that the film came in. And then, of course, when you bought your Camrock, the film came with it, and you loaded it yourself, flew it. And then all of our customers were faced with a dilemma in that because it was that unique round shape, you couldn't take it to your local drugstore to get it developed. You actually had to stick it back in that envelope and mail it back to Estes, where another one of these dark rooms is where we processed the film and then printed your picture for you. All of that got put back into an envelope and mailed back to you. So we had an awful lot of film processing and picture printing going on right there in Penrose. And I think that that was one of the many factors that led to Estes' success, but that was what we call a touch point in marketing jargon. And it enabled us to have multiple touch points with our customers because you mailed things to us, and then we had the ability to mail a lot of things back to you. And of course, when your processed picture and film came back, it generally came back with some type of a coupon or additional incentive to place another order with us. And it was all kind of a self-perpetuating thing that Vern and Glita worked out to be a very successful business model. So moving along, down this hallway, all of these, of course, are now just storage rooms. Here's another one. I thought you would enjoy just seeing some of the older kits and built-ups. Most of these were shows that were, were models that were built either as show models or photo models. Back in the day, we had to take a picture of everything in the catalog. Now we use digital technology and we use actual renders, and we really don't need photo models anymore. There's some old Cox stuff, Star Wars box. Okay, these two offices here with the wood doors. Another interesting part of the Estes story. So if you remember earlier on in the tour, we were in the training center. I was talking about that being an order processing room. Well, Estes was a mail order company, so everything came in through the mail. But you also have to remember that back in the 60s, UPS and FedEx didn't exist as we know them today. So the primary method for us to ship everything from Penrose was also the US mail. So we literally had trucks coming in and going out. And because of the high volume and the fact that Penrose, Colorado didn't have its own post office at the time, these two rooms with the wood doors actually became the Penrose post office. And we subleased this space to the USPS, and there were actually federal postal employees on site running the Penrose post office with that stamp that said the model rocket capital of the world. Today they are just storage rooms, and one of them we don't sanitize, so that's why it has the area closed on it. So now we're going to move in. This was originally a photo studio where we did all of our still photography. Now we do some still, but the green background is where we do most of our video production. And so we've repurposed it, but there you can see we've got it set up for some still. And this is the studio portion where we're doing an awful lot of video. And of course, that is all post-COVID and as a result of COVID. So come on with me now. Now we're going to leave the front admin building and go out and take a tour of some of the rest of the facility. It was cold on Tuesday. So this building now that you're looking at is 201, and inside it is our machine shop. So much of the equipment that we use at Estes is proprietary and was designed and manufactured by ourselves in-house. So that would include things like all of the engine machines. We're on generation 4 now of Mabel, and we make all of those ourselves. Most of what's involved in manufacturing the wadding is all manufactured in-house, and also our starters is something that's done in-house. And what's unique about this, and the reason we still have an active machine shop, is that you can't just open up a McMaster car catalog and look up rotary index machine spare parts and check things off and order them. So we have an extensive collection. There's over 7,000 spare parts on hand for all of this unique machinery. And the reason for that is that it's really important that we minimize downtime. So if we bend a ram tip or something else on one of the engine machines, there's plenty of spares in place so that we can just swap it out and get the machine running again very quickly. So quick view of the machine shop. Now we're going to pop in, and on this day it turns out that Dave Del Vecchio was in. Dave is one of my long time people. Dave started his career as a senior in high school in 1976, and he's never left. And he is an incredible wealth of institutional knowledge. He's the person who's responsible for the G4 design on all of the Mabels, and continues to design and fabricate new machinery for us, and then of course keeps all the old stuff running. So Dave has been with us since 1976 and has no plans to retire soon, thankfully, but he's a fantastic resource and I just love working with him. All right, now we are up outside the engine compound. I'm gonna go backwards, forwards. Pause it when we're right out in front. All right, so this facility, this is 10 acres fenced and controlled within our 300 acres. And of course, this is all tightly controlled because of both BATF regulations and now DHS since 9/11 is another whole government entity that we have to abide by a pretty strict set of rules. It's a very limited access facility. Very few people that work for us actually have access in here. There's 11 people dedicated to this particular part of the facility, and then I think there's maybe 5 others that have authorization to go in and out to move materials and so forth. And I think my head count right now is 67, so that's an awful lot of people that still don't have access. And even if you work for us, most people have never been inside the facility and seen how we actually make the rocket engines. But of course, what's unique about this facility, a lot of people ask me, well, why are there all these buildings? And that is a safety protocol. So the idea with pyrotechnic manufacturing is it's not if something happens, it's when something happens. And so NFPA has a code for manufacturing of pyrotechnic materials, and it has very specific setback distances. And the idea is that you isolate everything so that if you do have an accident and something goes boom or blows up, it's isolated and it doesn't wipe out your entire facility. We have had instances where something goes boom over the years, and pretty much it's a non-event, and that also has to do with how the facility is designed, laid out, and the buildings themselves. The actual buildings, if you look right in the center of that picture, you'll see a dumpster and then a building behind it that's 2 stories. That upper story, we call that a penthouse, and it's actually made out of styrofoam. And that's where all of the black powder actually is housed, and through a volumetric call system gets dropped down into the building onto the machine. So when we're manufacturing a rocket engine, actually the safest place to be standing is actually right next to the machine itself while it's operating, because that's where the least amount of black powder is present. There's really only enough black powder to drop into each engine that's being manufactured on the rotary table itself. And most of the black powder is up above. So from time to time, either through a static discharge or something, we do blow one of those penthouses. I can tell you it's been 21 years since that's happened. But when that happens, it's kind of a very loud whoosh and a very large plume of smoke. And then it's all over, and there's all these little bits of white styrofoam beads just floating down, and it's all over. And at that point, the operator usually goes home because he has to change his pants. And I'm not kidding. Anyways, so let's go ahead. We're gonna go into the facility. Of course, there's a lot that I can't show you, but you are going to get to see one of the machines spitting out engines. This building here is the front office. This is Fred Alear. He's been with us 34 years. He's in charge of engine manufacturing. So here's a little bit better close-up building. And here you go. Here is a machine. On this particular day, on this machine, we were making C67s. And you can see it's about every 4 to 4.5 seconds coming down that chute. And there comes a complete engine. During the whole manufacturing process, we do a tremendous amount of static testing. So approximately every 100 engines off the machine, we pull one, static test it, make sure that we are within an acceptable set of performance parameters. If we're high or low, then this QA person will go back to the machine operator and will make an adjustment to the machine, either up or down on the amount of powder that's dropped in. But we do a tremendous amount of static testing every day. This guy here, his name is T.R. Renke, and all he does all day long is static test engines. So right now he's just put one in. He's hooking the starter up. You'll see him put the safety shield down, asking me if it's okay if he shoots, asked me if I had my ear protection on, and now look over his right shoulder and you'll actually see the engine fire. There you go. You can see the engine glowing, and it had a long delay on this one. And pop, there goes the ejection charge. And then of course it collects all the data. And like I said, it's a constant process. So that's actually the first part of the QA testing. After all the engines are made, they go through a cure period, which depends on if it's an A, B, C, or D size engine, actually E and F also. And the bigger the engine, the longer the cure time, anywhere from about 10 days up to 30 days. When they come out of cure, they are static tested again. And if everything is still within the performance parameters, then they are released for production, and they're transported from that engine facility across the street to what we call assembly and warehousing. So now we are looking from the engine compound, which would be to your back. To your right-hand side there is the 201 building, and behind that is the front admin. And as we pan on this, you're panning up to the north. That across the street there is assembly warehousing. And so this is, that warehouse there is 40,000 square feet. That is all of our finished goods. The low-lying area in the center is assembly, and then the large warehouse to the north is raw materials. This is the engine labeling machine. You can see it labels a lot faster than we make the engines. Generally, this machine is working 3 to 4 weeks out ahead of manufacturing across the street. It's all done with an ERP system that keeps track of lot codes and what engine and what lot code are going to be manufactured on any specific day. So the casings and the lot codes are actually printed ahead of time and then produced on the day that they're supposed to be produced. This is one of those very unique machines. This is the wadding machine. So after the wadding itself has been flame treated, I'll pause this right here. So yes, wadding is toilet paper. We are the second largest purchaser of toilet paper in Fremont County, right behind the prison system. And then I'm told the school system buys just a little bit less than us. But we buy an awful lot of a particular Scott brand toilet paper. It is run through a flame proofing solution, spun, oven dried, and then it comes across the street and goes onto this machine, which rolls it off of the rolls, marries it all together, and depending on whether we're putting together 12 pieces that go in a 3-pack of engines in a starter set, or 75 to 100 pieces going in a retail package, this machine itself can be reconfigured where it counts it all out and folds it. So on this particular day when we were filming this, it's doing the 75-piece wadding accessory. It's really cool to watch this make the little, you can see that roll of plastic film dead center in the picture. It actually folds 12 sheets of wadding with an instruction sheet and forms a plastic bag around it, seals all of it, and drops it into a box. Wasn't able to show you that on this video because it wasn't doing it that day. But that's counting down 75 sheets. All right, so now we are with our starter manufacturing. So currently Estes is manufacturing about 3 million rocket engines, between 3 and 5 million rocket engines a year. At our peak, we were making 14. So obviously for every rocket engine we make across the street, we need a corresponding starter to go with it. So we have a number of specialty machines that have been designed in-house that form the wires, weld the bridge wire, run it through the dip mixture, and then cut them into the twos. And basically, we make 2 times the number of starters every year that we do engines. So anywhere between 6 and 10 million starters a year are manufactured. And I'm going to roll that video again for you so you can see the rate at which the starters come off. These are all current solar starters. As I mentioned in the manufacturers forum on Friday night, we're making a running change where we have a new dip mixture, and our solar starters will become StarTech starters, and they will have a energetic dip mixture on them. I like to say it's an exothermic dip, which will create a heated flash to supplement just the nichrome wire. And I also forgot to mention Friday night that we have done a lot of beta testing with these over the fall, and a number of you participated in that. And we got an awful lot of very positive feedback, most of which was, how soon can I get these? So stay tuned. Like I said, these should be starting to show up in your local hobby shop in late April, early May. So starting the video up again. All right. This is one of the conveyor belt lines that we run. These belts are configured where we can do all kinds of different things, from packing out kits. On this particular day, they were actually price stickering rocket engines for Hobby Lobby. Now we're taking a walk up into the north warehouse. This is all raw materials and work in process. So in any factory situation, it's all about flow. And in an optimum situation, your raw materials come in one end of the factory and finished goods go out the other. And that's pretty much exactly how these buildings are configured. Our raw materials come in to this warehouse here. They move through the center where we just were with that conveyor belt line, and then we'll finish this up out in the finished goods warehouse. So a lot of this is packaging materials. When I start the video back up again here, you'll notice these smaller boxes that are here in the foreground. These are all finished rocket engines. Each one of those boxes has 500 complete rocket engines in it that are waiting to be packaged in one form or another, from the 3-pack blister packs to the 24-piece educator bulk packs to a little 3-piece poly bag with wadding and starters and plugs in it that we put into all the different starter sets. So I'll start this back up again, and I had asked them to have one of them open for me, so you could see there's an engine and 500 of its brothers sitting there waiting to be. So now we're taking a walk into the finished goods warehouse. And when I gave this tour 2 years ago for NARAM, people likened this to Raiders of the Lost Ark, that it was kind of walking into this voluminous area with nothing but lots and lots of rocket kits. This area here is what we call the mail center. And this is where all of your, if you order direct from us on estesrockets.com, that's where your orders are processed. And peak season this year, our Christmas season, we processed over 10,000 orders at Christmas time through that area. Also, the large open floor space, this stack to the left here, this is all, those are, I believe, launch sets that just came in on a container from China. And they're staged in this area. They go through a QA process. They go through a QA process before they leave the Orient, and then we do another one once they arrive. And then they're released and put into the warehouse. Oftentimes, especially Christmas and sometimes peak season in the spring, this stuff never makes it onto the warehouse shelves. It literally comes in, gets QA checked, and the pallets go right straight back out to customers. So that is a pretty good cook's tour of the model rocket capital of the world. I am going to switch to the Q&A now. I think I need to unshare my screen. Which is play in mini view. All right, having trouble unsharing. Hopefully I don't lose you guys. If I do, I will come back on, I promise.
Bill, if you go to the left side on the blue bar,
yeah.
Just
oh, there
click
it
on
is.
the share screen. Yeah.
Okay. Now you're looking at my smiling face and blue shirt. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll through some of these QAs and try and get some questions answered for you. Looks like a lot of thanks. Tour, awesome. Thanks, thanks, thanks. Someone said great follow-up to the RM60. It looks like a question about finished goods warehouse stuff being ready for shipment to Finland, where they're crazy about model rocketry. Okay, so thank you for all the kudos and thank yous, but you got an opportunity to ask questions, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions popping up. I'll hang tight in case somebody really is dying to know something.
Bill, can you refresh your screen? Make sure you're on the Q&A toggle.
Yeah. Thanks. I wasn't. I was on chat. So Pat Fitzpatrick, this is a good one. I'll spend a little time with Pat's question. So Pat asks, Bill, without giving away any trade secrets, can you describe a little bit about the design process? So sure. Great ideas come from everywhere, and we actually have what we call a blue sky process at Estes, where any employee can submit an idea, and there's a form that they go through that they submit. We have a lot of very regular meetings where we start with blue sky ideas. Typically, most of the stuff that you see either comes from the sales and marketing department, where a specific customer has asked for a variant or something. And then I would say another 25%, absolutely, the ideas come from people like you. Certainly, all of the bringbacks, we're polling all of you on a pretty regular basis now. And based on the responses, that's what dictates what we think you guys want to see next as far as a re-release. And we will keep doing re-releases. But my objective here is what we really want to start doing is creating a whole new set of classics so that 20 years from now, you're going to be asking for re-releases of some of the cool new stuff that we're bringing out now. Of course, John Boren is an endless source of incredible ideas. I have a sign up in my office that basically says, ideas are plentiful. Ideas are plentiful. There's no shortage of ideas, only capacity to execute them. So it really is a honing process of what is unique and or different. I would say that the two things that we spend a lot of time on right now is we developed our own in-house storylines for the Space Corp and the Destination Mars. And each one of those products has a unique story in itself, and the product story also ties into a bigger picture of kind of like a comic book, an ongoing comic book series. So we're getting back into storytelling and talking a lot more, trying to get, well, you know, a good story helps you understand what the visual of the rocket is and the intent and why there may be pods on the wings or landing gear or something like that. And it's just good creativity. So once an idea is chosen, there's an entire financial analysis that's done. It's called an IRR, internal rate of return. We look at all the different channels that the product will be distributed through. We try and predict ahead of time how many units will be sold over what period of time. Then the next step is it goes through a costing exercise where we look at what it's actually going to cost to produce it, and if it can be sold at a realistic retail. Sometimes we have these really cool ideas, and turns out it would be a $90 kit, and we have to say, wait, hold on a second, that's not going to fly. What can we do to bring this down so that it's a $34.99 kit? And then it gets kicked back to John. John does a redesign. The process gets repeated and then gets signed off. Then we basically, the first thing that happens from a production standpoint is if there's tooling involved, we start the tooling. Generally, it's about 6 to 8 weeks before we get first shots out of the molds. Those first shots come, we assemble the kit, check everything for fit, make adjustments to the mold if needed. And then the very next phase, which is usually 3 to 4 weeks later, we get what's called EP sample, which that's pre-production. That has all the actual cut to length body tubes, tweaked plastic parts. Those we generally construct between 3 and 6 flight test models. We go out and we do all kinds of flight testing. Every kit is test flown numerous times with every single recommended engine, and has to be signed off on. And if it flies, passes that final pre-production flight testing, then we give it the thumbs up, and we actually go into production on it. And they make them and stick them in a container, and 6 weeks later they show up here in Penrose, and we ship them out to you. Okay, John Sicker has asked, how many versions of Estes starters have been produced? So, to my knowledge, that would be, for standard black powder engines, probably about 3 variants. So at least 2 nichrome only versions that I would say were in the pre-Damon era. And then once Damon acquired it, that was the birth of the solar. And no real material, no specific changes to solar igniters over the year other than some specific changes to the alloys used in the wires themselves. And then, of course, 10 years ago, when we went from the pyrogen dip to the glue dip. So I guess technically now these new StarTech would probably be the 5th iteration, because there's nothing mechanically different in the wires, the alloys, the welding technique. All of that is still the same, but now there is a new dip mixture. And then the sonic igniter is a completely different breed, and we do still make those on a limited basis, and those are currently made in-house also. Bill Lindsay asks, will you be bringing some of the classic Pro Series kits back and adding to the Pro Series line? Yes, we will. Mr. Duffy, James Duffy, without getting into sensitive or proprietary info, everybody loves to say that. do you plan to expand sales internationally? I think the overarching answer to that is yes. There were definitely some complexities with Brexit and waiting to see what happened with the EU and Brexit. I think the dust is somewhat settled on that. And as I mentioned on Friday night, we are actually operating from a 5-year plan. And part of the 5-year plan does include further expansion internationally. Scott Tyrrell asks kind of a fun one. Does Estes know who the artists were for the catalog covers, 70s and early 80s, face cards? I would love if there was an online archive of the original artwork, many of which are displayed in the office there. So, Scott, yes, we do know who most of the artists were. And in addition, a lot of that artwork has been saved and is on site. And one of the many ongoing projects that I have is cataloging, organizing, and preserving what is left of Estes history on site. Very, very unfortunately, one of the very first things that Barry Tunick did when he owned the company was throw a great deal of it out, literally threw it out. And some of the employees at the time, Mike Hellman was one of them. I think Matt Steele was here at that same time frame. They had enough common sense that after work they actually went and did some dumpster diving and pulled a bunch of stuff out. But unfortunately, there are some gaps in our archives. But we do have a really good black and white photo archive. We have an incredible archive of instruction sheets and line art drawings and packaging art. So not quite sure what we're going to do with all of that. Some of it, if we could figure out a great way to curate it and tell a story with it, I think it would make an incredible coffee table book. So again, no shortage of ideas, just time and capacity to execute some of this stuff. Oh, and John Beach says, can we get a collection of Estes art book? So yeah, it's an idea that it merits some serious thought, and it's just not going to happen next year. Okay, moving down the question list. Frank D'Angelo. Frank says, I work in advertising. I can honestly say that the new ownership has done a great job marketing. It could be seen in your catalogs. Well, Frank, thank you. Yes, one of the specific changes that the Langfords made is, Hobbyco, essentially what they did is they centralized a lot of the operations and pulled them out of Penrose. So sales and marketing was one of the things that we were not doing ourselves in-house. That was being done by the team in Champaign, Illinois. And quite honestly, none of them were Rocketeers. And I would also say that none of them were very well connected to the company and our purpose and what we were doing. So we have stood up, again, we have our own internal sales team and our own marketing team. Marketing right now has 8 people involved in marketing. And yeah, so we're paying an awful lot of attention to our marketing. We're really trying to hone in on our voice and our messaging. We know how to talk to you guys. You guys are easy. What we're really trying to do is, how do we talk to that soccer mom who walks into a Target or a Hobby Lobby store and pulls one of our launch sets or starter sets off the shelf? How do we talk to her and engage her and get her interested where she says, oh, this is really cool. I should buy this for my daughter or my son because this is a really cool STEM activity. That's what we're really trying to do, is we really want to see this industry grow, and we've got to bring new, fresh people in. We've got to get young people interested. And so you'll see a lot of things, a lot of experiments. in our platforms and our messaging, particularly over the next year, as we try and identify these personas and how to speak directly to them. Roy Green asked a good one. Will you ever do composite motors again like you did in 1998? And then in parens, not the relabeled AT motors, but the Dark Stars. Roy, I guess one way to answer that is we could make Dark Stars today if we chose to. That was something that Estes had invested in, all the technology, fixtures, equipment. We still own all of it. We own the formulations, the casings. We could make Dark Stars. Would you really need an Estes G80 Dark Star over an Aerotech? So I think that the answer that I'm going to give you is we are doing a lot of research and have been testing all kinds of new things in engine development. And when you do see something new from Estes, I would say it will have a reason to be, and that reason to be would be that it will have form, feature, function that you don't currently have today. Something new and a new tool, a new toy for you guys to go out and play with. That's what I can say you would see coming from Estes in the future. So I think y'all lost me. Sorry. I was trying to scroll and I stepped out. Get back into the Q&A. I'm going to go for just a couple more questions and my time will be up. So Alexander Fadiv asked a good one. He says, Bill, any plans to reissue historic U.S. space flight models, Titan, Gemini, Jupiter, Pershing, Centauri, Atlas Space Shuttle, etc.? By the way, there is a definite market for high-end quality models at $89.99 plus price point. Alexander, thank you for the great idea. I think that, again, the broad-based answer to this is yes. So we started with the beautiful desktop model in 2019 of the 1/200 scale Saturn V. We just released this beauty, which is the 1/200 scale SLS. And again, a nice, beautiful desktop, flyable desktop model. We absolutely are working on building that line out. I gave some hints Friday night as to SpaceX and Blue Origin, and I think that you would see products in the beautiful display model category for both of those companies with numerous different vehicles. So stay tuned in that regard. Regarding some of the historic stuff, yes, and I think what we'll do in that regard is we're going to poll you guys. So you'll see Facebook requests for, hey, what do you think of this? And of these three, which one would you ask for? You know, we polled all of you, and hands down, the 1/100th re-release of the Saturn 1B was absolutely, every time over the last 2 years that we tried to poll you as to what you would like to see, this was the kit that universally won, hands down, every time. And so, yeah, we do listen to you guys, very much so. And Bernard Crawley says, Bill, we can stay on longer if you can. So, all right, I'll go a few extra minutes if I don't see people dropping off. I see there's like 15,000 of you on right now. Just kidding. Guy Gelhausen asks a good question. Are F-15, E-16, and E-12 motors back in full production? So the answer to that is yes. The E-12s actually were the first to go back into full production. They went back into production in the fall and are very widely available currently. I'll just tell you the E-12s actually went through a little bit of a design change, and they are made differently than they were previously. So without giving away too much of a trade secret, there are more drops and more presses, which creates a better grain and just a much better rocket motor overall. So all of those new E-12s that you see out there, anything that has a date code of 2020 is going to be a killer engine. And on the F-15s and the E-16s, we're just getting started now on production. That's a little bit slower process, and they have been getting out into the marketplace. And I would say within 60 days, we will have filled all of the old back orders that are out there. They'll be in stock and will remain in stock and widely available to all of you. So we really do appreciate your patience on all of that. It was a long time. It was a pretty big capital investment, and but the end result is a plentiful supply of very reliable. You're not going to find you're not going to be filing mess reports on any of these new engines that are coming out. Question on the E9s. We currently have retired making the E9s. I would say there's a possibility we would bring that back, but I think there's some other things in development that you might see before we do a bring back on E9s. One of the questions that was asked Friday night was about Super Cs, the C5s. How about a C5 Zero booster? And yeah, that will probably be the next thing you'll see is a C5 booster. And I think you will also potentially see a bigger kick B booster is certainly in the works. Curtis Reagan asks a good question. We work with Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Girl Scouts. I would like to see you come out with complete package deals to include kits, motors for the different age groups, and include some fun items like educational sticker items. Okay. So other than the fun items with the educational stickers, I'll make a note of that. That's interesting. As far as the packaging and putting package deals together, we're in the process of a rework of the website. And one of the things that you'll see on the new website due by the end of the year of 2021 is a lot more options. Again, we're trying to speak to that person who has never done this before and shows up and has no idea what they should be buying. And the website will be much easier to navigate, and we'll do a much better job helping newbies of any kind figure out what it is they need, how to get it into their cart, and purchase it. So I think that's how you'll see us handling that. Doug Garcia asks, will the 29mm engines be available at Hobby Lobby? No, they won't. Answered about Super Cs. Hey, Todd, if you could do me a favor and pull up some of the questions at the bottom. That's where I seem to be struggling, is getting to some of the older questions, and I managed to, that's how I disconnected a few minutes ago.
Sure, Bill.
Thanks. And I said Scott, I'm sorry, I meant Todd.
I'm going to read a couple of them to you, just you can answer.
Okay.
Way. What frac motors did you say were static tested?
How many? So I think I might have slipped, and I think I said 1 out of 100. It's 1 out of 200. That's what's done. That's the static testing that is done while the machine is running, and then varying numbers are static tested during and after the cure periods.
Great, thanks. Brian Santos is asking, why are they called starters instead of igniters?
So that harks back to some litigation with the ATF about a decade ago. An igniter is actually a regulated device, and so we could no longer call them igniters and get away with how we were classifying them for shipment and how they were being shipped. It also, the tentacles of that spread into how they could be, you could store them yourselves and so forth. So it required us and most of the other manufacturers to change, and Estes adopted the name starters. I think that Aerotech has starters, initiators. There's a number of different names that we all adopted that were anything but igniter. But I myself, in conversation at the plant all the time, I still can't get used to calling them starters and call them igniters all the time.
Sure. Joyce is asking, do you have the original Estes tour movie? Is that something that could possibly ever be put on YouTube?
So that's a really interesting question. The answer is I might. So the week of New Year's, we were doing our year-end physical inventory. And so while that was going on, we weren't shipping anything. And I would say it was a little bit slower pace in the office than normal. So I took a couple of days to, there are so many rooms that I did not show you guys that are just crammed full of stuff. And when I say crammed, I'm not exaggerating. It's crammed. And I'm one of the few people that I authorize to go through these rooms, because a lot of people don't understand what should be saved and what shouldn't be saved. So the burden kind of falls on me. So whenever I can, I take a few extra hours and I start going through stuff and sorting. And I will tell you, in one of my very recent forays into one of those rooms, I ran across a large box of old 16 millimeter films. And I believe there may be something, well, I know there's lots of really cool stuff in there. One of the immediate problems was we don't have a 16 millimeter projector here to even run them. I think the general plan on that is those need to go outside to a professional, someplace professional that first of all knows how to handle old 16 millimeter film, and then immediately can digitize it. So I would ask if any of you out in the audience know of some place that's really good at that. Why don't you send me an email message or send it to Sandra at customer service, and she'll make sure that I get a hold of it.
Great.
Next question.
We've got another question here. Ron is asking if you can show the Antar kit again that's behind you on the table.
Sure.
And feel free to talk about a couple of those kits that you have there.
Oh, so I don't know. I don't know if that's fair to the other manufacturers, but I will talk about the Antar because I'm really proud of this kit. So as I'll just repeat what I said Friday night, maybe embellish it a little bit more for you guys that are on today. So we're trying to do one kit a year as part of what we call the Designer Signature Series. And the first one last year was the Vern Estes Orange Bullet. This year it's the Antar, which is one of the G. Harry Stine kits. What's unique about the Antar is that this is a spaceship that my dad designed. I believe that the year that he started sketching this was about 1951. He was working at White Sands. He was writing science fact and science fiction books at night. And you got to remember, there weren't any real spaceships. Everything was fictional at that time. So one of the things that he had a lot of fun doing is designing spaceships of the future. Harry was an incredible draftsman, and beyond being a draftsman, he could also sketch. So I ran across one of his sketchbooks, and it's probably too small to see, but on the package itself, this is a black and white marker sketch that he had done. This was another one. There was a series of maybe 5 or 6 of these sketches as this concept for Antar unfurled, and he designed it. And then he wound up actually building a physical model of this spaceship, which stands, the real one stands about 30 inches tall. And again, this was the early 1950s, so model rocketry did not exist yet. And the concept of body tube, nose cone, fins also didn't really exist. So the original prototype for this, which I have, and it's sitting in my office in Penrose, it's carved balsa wood. So the whole thing, the body, the nose cone, the real cool boat tail transition on the rear end of this thing was all carved and sanded balsa wood, faithfully, the grain all filled beautifully. And what was very, very interesting is that, of course, there was no engine mount in the rear end of this thing. But when you look at the original, there is a cavity and obviously a nozzle. And it is so amazingly close to an 18 millimeter diameter and nozzle. It's frightening, but it's not. It's just carved. And so having the original, I thought, this would make such a sexy model rocket. So he was actually working on a prototype of a flying version of this when he passed away in 1998. And when I went to clean up his workbench after he had passed, the various components of this were on the workbench. And I didn't know this was a project he was working on. He used to love to work on stuff like that, and then he would bring it up to me at Quest, and he would, he'd unveil this stuff. He'd say, "What do you think of this?" So unfortunately, I never got to see him do that with this one, but I always felt it would be just an incredible kit. So we turned it into one, and there's a great story behind it. It flies fantastic. I'll tell you that we stayed true to his original paint pattern, and we've just had several of these built for, we still do show models, and Chris Michelson does a lot of those for us. And Chris emailed me last week, and he said, "Bill, that paint pattern is a bitch on that thing, but it is cool." So this is actually in production right now, and it goes on the water. Well, it went on the water because they just took a break for Chinese New Year, and this is now on the water, so it'll be shipping and available in April. So that's the story behind Antar.
Great. We'll close out with just a last 2 questions for you.
All right.
What's the difference between a Super C and a C engine?
Higher initial spike in the thrust. Bigger kick off the pad.
Great. And then our last question comes from Paul Kinzer. How long did you think about going to work for Estes, and are you glad you did?
It took me about 24 hours to say yes to John Langford when he made me the offer in 2018. And am I happy that I did it? I have never been happier. I worked 42 years to get to Estes, to get back to Estes, because I started there in 1978. So it took me 42 years to come full circle, stay in the industry. Along the way, I worked with so many great people, and I learned so many wonderful things from Grant Boyd and Lee Peaster, Gary Rosenfield. I have a long list And then, of course, with Quest, my involvement with Dane Bowles. So I spent a lifetime, but of course, the one objective was to always wind up in Penrose. And here I am. It's a dream job. We have, this industry is so lucky that the Langfords bought this business. I can tell you that the damage that had been done to it by the previous regimes was tremendous, and we got a really good solid footing. And the Langfords are they're a great family to own a business like this, because we're working on a long-term plan. When Tunic and the various equity companies owned this, that's a short-term way of looking at things. You're looking in a 5 to 7 year horizon. How can I flip this, make the most money, get in, get out? So I often refer to those owners as the robber barons, because I really do believe that they were. There's ample evidence, and I don't have to go into that with you guys. But so now we've got people that own this business that, they want their grandkids to be running this business 30 and 40 years from now. So that's a real long-term vision. So the type of investment that we make and positioning that we're doing, it's all long-term thinking. And so I just gave you a very long-winded answer to the simple question of, am I happy where I am? And the answer is yes. Yeah, these are good times. So that is probably the best place to stop the session for today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate you taking your time out of Sunday afternoon and joining us. And with that, we'll end the broadcast.
Great. Thanks, everybody. It was a great NARCON. I hope you had a good time. I sure did. And I look forward to the day when we can all meet face-to-face again for these. That's a lot of fun. And this is a fun format, but it ain't the same as everybody getting together. Thanks again.